Have you ever heard of a story so chilling, so utterly baffling, that it sounds like something straight out of a horror movie? Today, we're delving into one of modern France's most disturbing and unresolved mysteries. It's a story about a seemingly perfect family, a respected father, and a horrifying discovery buried right under their own home. This is the tragic and perplexing case of the Dupont de Ligonnès family massacre. In the spring of 2011, in the quiet city of Nantes, a tale began to unfold that would shock the entire nation. It centers around a family that, to all outward appearances, had it all. Let's set the scene. The Dupont de Ligonnès family lived in a comfortable home in Nantes. The father, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, hailed from an old, noble French family line. He was described by everyone as charismatic, intelligent, and exceptionally well-liked. He had a certain charm that put people at ease. His wife, Agnes, was a devout Catholic and a dedicated schoolteacher's assistant. She was the heart of the home, a loving mother to their 4 children, the oldest son Arthur, university student Thomas, also in university, and a high schooler, and the youngest, Benoit, who was in middle school. From the outside, they were the picture-perfect family. They attended church, the children were bright and well-behaved, and their home seemed filled with warmth. Neighbors saw them as a happy, close-knit unit. But as is often the case in stories like this, appearances can be incredibly deceiving. Behind the closed doors of their seemingly idyllic home, a dark reality was taking hold. Xavier's various business ventures were failing, one after another. He had accumulated a massive amount of debt, borrowing money from friends, family, and even his mistress. The financial pressure was immense, and the perfect facade of their life was beginning to crumble under the weight of crushing debt and deception. As April 2011 began, friends and neighbors started noticing that something was off. The shutters of the Dupont de Ligonnès house, usually open, remained tightly closed day and night. The family's cars were gone. Phone calls to any member of the family went straight to voicemail, which was highly unusual. The silence was unsettling. Then, a strange letter arrived at the children's schools and to some family members. The letter, supposedly written by Xavier, was bizarre, to say the least. It claimed that he was a secret agent working for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. According to the letter, his cover was blown, and he and his entire family had to be immediately whisked away into a witness protection program in America. He wrote that they couldn't be contacted for their own safety. He even told landlords to stop collecting rent and employers that his family had moved. For a moment, this outlandish story provided an explanation, however strange. But for those who knew the family well, it just didn't add up. Why would Xavier, a man struggling with small-time businesses, suddenly be a secret agent? Why would the family vanish without a single personal goodbye? The story was too elaborate, too cinematic. It felt less like a real explanation and more like a carefully constructed lie. The unease grew, and worried friends finally contacted the police. When the police first entered the family's house on April 13th, everything seemed strangely normal. The beds were stripped, but the home was tidy. It looked as if a family had packed up and left in an orderly fashion. There were no signs of a struggle, no immediate red flags. They left, but the strange letter and the complete silence still bothered investigators. The mystery was far from over. 8 days later, on April 21st, investigators returned, armed with a new and dreadful suspicion. Something led them to the back garden, specifically to the terrace beneath the porch. They began to dig. What they unearthed was beyond anyone's worst nightmare. Buried under a layer of dirt and quicklime, a substance often used to hasten decomposition and mask odors, they found 5 plastic bags. Inside each bag was a body, wrapped in a sheet. It was Agnes and all four of her children, Arthur, Thomas, and Benno. An autopsy would later reveal they had all been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, likely as they slept. Alongside them, investigators found the bodies of their two beloved Labradors, also shot. The entire family, except for one person, had been systematically executed and buried in a shallow grave in their own backyard. The father, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, was nowhere to be found. Instantly, Xavier became the prime and only suspect. The man who had crafted the elaborate story about being a secret agent was now the most wanted man in France. An international arrest warrant was issued. Investigators quickly pieced together his movements after the estimated time of the murders. It turned out Xavier hadn't vanished into a secret government program. Instead, he had meticulously planned his escape. Security cameras captured him leaving Nantes alone in his Citroën C5. He began a strange, solitary journey south through France. He wasn't exactly hiding. He used his own credit card to withdraw cash from ATMs and check into budget hotels along the way. He was spotted dining alone, appearing calm and composed. His journey seemed almost like a farewell tour of his past life. Finally, on April 15th, his car was found abandoned in the parking lot of a budget hotel in Roquebrune-sur-Argens, a small town in the south of France. Surveillance footage from that day showed him walking away from the hotel, carrying a large bag on his back, heading towards the mountainous terrain nearby. This was the last confirmed sighting of Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès. After that moment, he simply disappeared. He walked into the wilderness and vanished from the face of the earth. So, what happened to him? Is Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès dead, or is he still alive, hiding somewhere in the world? This question has fascinated and frustrated investigators for over a decade. There are several dominant theories. One theory suggests that Xavier, overcome with guilt and having nothing left to live for, took his own life in the rugged mountains near where his car was found. Extensive searches of the area were conducted, but no body was ever discovered. The terrain is vast and difficult, so it's possible his remains were simply never found. Another, more popular theory is that he orchestrated a masterful escape. Proponents of this idea believe the murders and the subsequent journey were all part of a long-conceived plan. They argue he used the time leading up to the murders to secure fake documents and a new identity. With his aristocratic background and intelligence, some believe he could have had the resources and connections to start a new life abroad, perhaps in South America or another country where he could blend in. Over the years, there have been over 1,000 alleged sightings of Xavier all over the world, in Italy, in Thailand, in Argentina. In 2019, a dramatic arrest was made at a Glasgow airport in Scotland. Police were certain they had finally caught him after a fingerprint match. The news spread like wildfire, but it turned out to be a devastating mistake. The man was an innocent retiree who just happened to look like him. Every lead, every sighting, has turned into a dead end. The core question remains, what could possibly drive a man to annihilate his entire family? What turns a seemingly loving father and husband into a cold-blooded killer? Was it the crushing shame of his financial failures? As a descendant of nobility, the humiliation of being unable to provide for his family may have been too much to bear. Some speculate that his actions were rooted in a twisted interpretation of his religious beliefs. In emails discovered later, he wrote about a coming apocalypse and the need to save his family from a world he saw as corrupt. Was this a horrific, misguided act of salvation in his own mind? Or was it simply the ultimate act of narcissistic rage? If he couldn't have his perfect life, then no one could. We simply don't have the answers. The house where the horrific events took place stood as a dark monument for years. Eventually, it was sold and demolished, an attempt to erase the physical scar from the neighborhood. But the story remains deeply etched in the collective memory of France. The people who knew Xavier are still haunted by the duality of the man they thought they knew. They remember him as calm, polite, and even gentle. This makes the brutality of his alleged crimes all the more terrifying. It's a chilling reminder that the darkest secrets can hide behind the most ordinary of smiles. A loving father who became a monster, and then a ghost that no one can find. More than a decade has passed since the tragedy in Nantes, but the case of the Dupont de Ligonnès family remains open and unsolved. A family buried under a mountain of lies, and a father who vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of death and a haunting, unanswered question: why? Some mysteries fade with time, but this one continues to haunt France and the rest of the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into this incredibly complex case. If you found this story as compelling as I did, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one.